Good evening. Merry Christmas. Beautiful night in Texas. Weather's going to change pretty soon, but we're enjoying it outside tonight as we discuss with you a variety of topics, bit by bit by bit. I'm going to start with the firing of Mike Nolan, which hasn't happened yet, but probably needs to. I talked with a longtime NFL executive the other day about Nolan. He says it's the weirdest thing. He says half the league thinks he's incredible, and half the league thinks he's a dolt. That's the word he used. And nobody's in between. Really strong opinions all over the NFL over the course of a long time. For Mike Nolan, of course, the son of Dick Nolan, a longtime NFL guy who coached in Dallas some 30 plus years ago. And Mike Nolan, in a lot of ways, Dallas is kind of where he grew up in part, and then many stops along the way. One of his stops took him to where he became best friends with Mike McCarthy. And those two guys will call each other their football brothers. And this is a good thing. This is a beautiful thing. It's really neat, except it's not working. And after the first month of the season or so, there was already people calling for the firing of Mike Nolan. And I said then, calm down. Not that he gets a mulligan exactly, but can we give him a little time? I did say at the time that Mike Nolan helped supervise one of the dumbest things I've ever seen an NFL team do, which is to try to install a whole new defense in Zoom meetings. Remember, they didn't have an offseason. They didn't have a training camp. They didn't have preseason games. And in many cases, these new coaches never met the players in person that they were going to coach over the course of some time in the offseason. They had Zoom meetings. They met them like you and I are meeting. Not that this isn't warm and deep and meaningful, but this isn't quite the same. I mean, I wouldn't build a house with you over YouTube, but that's what they tried to do. They tried to build a house over Zoom meetings. It had never been tried before. It'll never be, God willing, that we don't have COVID again or anything like it. It'll never be tried again. And of course, even if we did have COVID, nobody'd ever do this again because it's so stupid. You're trying to take 50 men and completely readjust what they do for a living, where they would normally get months and months and months of repetition and work and practice, film session, face-to-face. Coaches actually taking their hand and moving it here and say, no, put your hand here, put your other hand here. For months and months and months of training and learning and drilling. And Mike McCarthy and Mike Nolan tried to do all of those things, sweeping changes in YouTube, in Zoom meetings. Really dumb, kind of arrogant. So let's evaluate after that first month when I said slow down, give them a minute. Then things did start to kick in a little bit for a minute. Now you had what I reported and Jane Slater also reported was a disconnect between players and coaches. One player told my friend Jane, these coaches don't know how to coach. They don't know how to teach. They don't know what they're doing. I can tell you now that Brandon Carr was on the list of people that said this defensive coaching staff is not good. Now, maybe Brandon Carr's biased, no longer here, of course. Maybe he's biased because they didn't let him play. Although maybe that was a mistake. Maybe he's right. But it wasn't just defensive players. It wasn't just guys who didn't get to play. It wasn't just disgruntled people. It was good guys, good players on offense and defense saying, I don't think this coaching staff is good at what it does, in large part because they tried to change things in midstream. The list of indictments of this coaching staff are long, and 3 and 9 gets you that. Once again, I got so many people coming at me, especially on Twitter. You're not doing it too much to me but they're doing it to me on Twitter. You're being too hard on McCarthy. Why aren't you this hard on Garrett? If you're bad, I'm hard on you. That's my job. If I was a movie reviewer and the movie's bad, it's nothing personal. My job is to say, man, Goonies stinks. I don't know why I picked Goonies. And if I'm a movie reviewer and the movie's good, I'm like, man, Goodfellas is awesome. It has nothing to do whether or not I like the director or the star or the producer or the janitor. It has nothing to do with whether I like them or don't like them. We're evaluating their work. And at 3-9, how can you not be hard on Mike McCarthy? The Cowboys aren't going to fire Mike McCarthy. That's at least $5 million a year investment times 5 years, might be $6 million a year. And of course, it's monopoly money for the Joneses still. That's an investment they believed in making. They still believe in it. I think you can go back now and question over the course of 13, 14 years in Green Bay. Yeah, he won a Super Bowl. Why didn't he win more of them with Aaron Rodgers? You could. That's a legitimate gripe, a legitimate criticism, I think, of Mike McCarthy. I think you can look at McCarthy this year in Dallas and say, what's so special again? What is he particularly good at again? Because we're not seeing it manifest itself in any way on the field. But you don't have to hire that. You don't have to fire the head coach. You don't have to demand that the Joneses do so. But McCarthy this week, after another debacle in Baltimore, where this team was never in it again, McCarthy, I guess it was a Wednesday presser with us, used the word accountability. He must have used it a dozen times, it seemed like. Accountability. Show me. How do you establish accountability? How do you tell the public, that's you, how do you tell the stockholder, that's you, that we are accountable? We're all the time calling for the firing of referees. We want referees fired all the time because of a bad call. We want players sent off to the Russian front because of a bad play. Somebody on the coaching staff needs to be accountable. We can go through the list on defense because by the way, you can say the offense doesn't have Dak, Tyron, and now Zach. Give me the defensive list that's like that. That would cause you to be maybe the worst. First of all, this is the worst scoring defense in NFL history. It has a chance to be finish 16 games as the worst scoring defense in NFL history. It's the worst scoring defense in Cowboys history. This coaching staff under McCarthy and Nolan too made two big promises about system. One, we're going to be a 4 down lineman front because that was the talent they had. That's not what they are. They lied. And two, we're going to fit our scheme to the players. And the reason they didn't do that is because these players, the same guys from last year, are worse players than they were last year. How did these decent players from a year ago, not great players, decent players, solid players, how did all these solid players from last year turn out to be so bad? Scheme, system, hesitancy, and disbelief in the system and in the coaches and in the teaching. And if you're going to talk about accountability, where do you press the accountability button? Mr. Jones is not going to fire himself. Stevens not going to fire himself. McCarthy is not going to get fired, I don't think. And in a salary cap era, you can't fire 53 players. So who's accountable for the worst defense, arguably, in franchise and scoring-wise, maybe the worst defense in NFL history, scoring-wise? Mike Nolan has to be held accountable. Tank Lawrence doesn't make sacks anymore. Leighton Vander Esch isn't a force anymore. They can't stop the run, ever, against anybody. To the point where you know what game plans are now. Lamar Jackson's Baltimore team can't really throw and doesn't have anybody to throw to even if Lamar could throw it. So they don't. I had a guy ask me before the game, he was doing FanDuel, and we were talking about what Ravens players you should put in. And I said, well, put in Lamar. He's going to rush for 100 yards. He rushed for 90 or whatever. And he said, what about running backs? I said, which one? And I said, all three? And I was joking, but it turned out to be right. If you did a FanDuel lineup and you put all three of those running backs in your lineup, and Lamar, you probably did okay. That's ridiculous. And it's got to be somebody's fault. And I'm not doing this because I want to see heads roll. I'm not doing this because I don't have a heart for a person. Mike Nolan, I've met him twice. Again, we're in a COVID time and a Zoom time. Otherwise, I would have met him dozens of times and hopefully gone and had a beer with him. That's not happening now. He's a smart, pleasant guy with a deep resume, but this didn't work. Somebody's got to be held accountable. McCarthy says it himself, accountability. Are they just flapping their gums or do they mean it? At the end of the year, the Joneses must go to Mike McCarthy and say, with all due respect to your brotherhood with Mike Nolan, you can be his brother. He can be your brother, but he can't be your defensive coordinator anymore. Thank you for watching our work here. I appreciate you subscribing to what we do. We are still working on, oh, by the way, I think we're up to 13,000 of you, like in a snap. Really appreciate that. I think what I'm going to do I have Ezekiel Elliott's bowling shoes in a cool box. And I think what we'll do is I'll do a video sometime soon and I'll show them to you. And I'll say, everybody who subscribes here, maybe I'll make you give me a secret code, or maybe I'll get you to assure me that you read cowboyssi.com for your Dallas Cowboys information. Dallas Cowboys information at cowboyssi.com. But valuable prizes coming your way. So please subscribe. Tell your friends, again, if you want it straight from Frisco, straight from the locker room, straight from the Star, get it right here on the Fish Report. Fish out.